Hey, what's up? It's Rena. So you want to make good art. That's great. Recently I've been looking at that statement a lot more and going, what does that even mean? You want to make good art? Do you mean like realism, what most people conventionally define as good art? Or do you mean like industry standard, gallery standard? What is the definition? What are you looking for? This isn't really a tutorial on how to make good art so much as it's just how I go about it. So hopefully you'll find this information helpful and you can apply it to some of your own work. The main thing is that we're not really even talking about making good art necessarily, we're just talking about improving. That's what we really want to do, is improve. First things first, we're going to have to define good. Do we mean objectively good or subjectively good? Where I'm trying to practice things like realism, the fundamentals, the basics, without trying to add a whole lot of artistic depth or interpretation to it. Just taking what there is and drawing it as it exists in real life. That's more like objectively good artwork. And then there's subjective good, which is more like stylistic, aesthetic, different things that people argue about all the time online when they say this is true art and this is not true art. That's subjective. A lot of the time people try and focus more on the subjective because it is what a lot of people talk about when it comes to improving and developing as an artist. You usually want to get your art style figured out before you get the basic objective understanding of what you're drawing. And I feel like that's kind of a mistake. At least it was for me personally. But I know plenty of other people who focused more on style first and then kind of went back and brushed up on the objective stuff and were absolutely perfectly fine. By the way my brain works, I prefer to understand what I'm looking at first and then figure out how to draw it. But yeah, no, when it comes down to it, it's not necessarily that the subjective stuff is like bad art, it's just that you may not like a particular aesthetic or style, and the other person does, and that's totally fine. The question very quickly becomes, what should I work on? What do I need to develop? And personally, I decided to start developing both the objective fundamentals and the subjective art style at the same time, which is a little bit more challenging, but definitely a lot more rewarding when it comes down to it, because my artwork starts to look more like I want it to, faster, and that's what I want. It just makes me a more well-rounded and developed artist in general when I'm able to draw a diverse set of things. So if I want to work on a diverse set of projects and have them be distinct from each other in art style, I can do that. Because I'll be more developed objectively, I'll know how to, break the rules and bend them in such a way where I can create something new subjectively. Frankly, you could just develop one or the other and still get to where you want to be. So if you just wanted to develop your artwork objectively, practicing anatomy and getting good at realism and things like that, you totally can. And then still move on to doing more stylistic things later on. Or you could do it the opposite direction, where you start more stylistic and learn more and apply more realistic principles to your artwork as time goes on. I find that I started sort of like a mix between the two, because I was still trying to mimic reality and doing objective artwork and realism. But at the same time, I was aware that I was taking some artistic liberty. So again, objective good would be things like realism, thinking in 3D, anatomy, all of those technical aspects of artwork. And then the subjective aspect, the part that everybody argues about all the time, is art style and aesthetic and deciding, how you want to represent the things that you're making, like how you want to represent people and plants and animals in your style. Both can be developed simultaneously or individually. Whatever route you choose to take, make sure that it's one that fits you and your specific needs when it comes to the kind of artwork that you want to make. For me personally, I wanted to achieve a more stylistic style, so improvement for me looks a little bit more like taking the basics and fundamentals that I've practiced and understand and applying it to my artwork. So when it comes to style, good art is subjective, but when it comes to improvement, better art is achievable. And again, that goes back to the objective versus subjective. I'd say better art or improving would probably lean more on the objective side of things. So if you want to add more depth to your piece, you'd practice things like shading, for example. And that's a good basic fundamental objective thing that almost every artist makes use of at some point in time. And better art is easily achievable. Like, it is an objective in and of itself, which is, again, why I say it leans more towards the objective side of art. And for me, the whole point is just to practice these things and get good at art so that I'm not just doing whatever I want all willy-nilly. I mean, I might be doing whatever I want all willy-nilly, but it has purpose, so. The point is, I have set goals for myself when drawing. I'm not going entirely off of just whatever I want entirely. Not entirely, but there is still obviously going to be some of just me in there because I felt like it and I wanted to. I mean, to be frank, this entire piece just screams I felt like it and I wanted to. Like, look at it. It's just happy, random trash art. Anyway, what was I saying? A big part of getting better at art is just being deliberate. Whatever you're gonna work on that on purpose. Do not be drawing whatever 100% of the time. allow yourself some leniency so that you can still just draw whatever you want. Because this is supposed to be fun still. It's just, it can also be used for work as well. Because frankly, when I draw just endlessly stuff that I want to draw, I feel like I've kind of wasted time because I didn't have anything particular in mind when I started drawing. So any improvement that I make goes to waste or goes unnoticed. Because there wasn't any specific plan that I had in mind when approaching the drawing that I was making. Like, yeah, sure, I could complete drawing after drawing after drawing, but if I'm just drawing endlessly and I'm not taking into account any mistakes that I've made or looking for specific areas to improve, I'm not gonna get any better, like, at all. I'm gonna become stagnant. Likewise, I could take it in the opposite direction and say that if it's just objective work that I'm doing constantly, where I'm always trying to improve and I'm always trying to get closer and closer to realism, if ultimately that is not the type of art that I want to make, or the type of art that I'm trying to sell, or the type of art that I'm trying to use to tell a story, then it is worthless to me. And ultimately, that's just because I've decided that I want to use my artwork to tell stories specifically. Like, that is my goal. That's what I want to do. Because in the end, all of the technicalities that I've learned only apply to that hyper-realistic style. I want to be as adaptive as possible so I can tell the most stories as possible. And so keeping all of that in mind, my ideal is to improve in those ways specifically, to improve as a storyteller and as an illustrator, but also to improve in adding, for example, like I said, depth to images so that we can tell what's in front, what's behind. Learning how to do expressions, which, probably going to be the next thing that I practice on the list, or, backgrounds. If I decide that I don't want to work with a background artist, I should probably figure out how to draw backgrounds at some point in time. And this is why most of the time when it comes down to it, you'll see that I only do as much realism practice as I need to in that particular moment. And then I'm going to take what I learned from that study and apply it to my own work and see if I can figure out how to stylize it, how to play with it, how to break it, figure out how to take that basic standard structure that is seen all throughout realism and change it so that it's no longer realism now, it is a cartoon style or an anime style or, whatever other style I decide to draw in. I need to practice, I need to exercise, I need to get fit, warm up, use reference, all of these important things that I know to do already, but I kind of don't take the time to do all the time. And that I certainly wouldn't take the time to do if I was just trying to focus on putting out as much artwork as possible. And those are the things that everybody says, but they say it because it's necessary. Like, don't just go out flailing, though, and just start practicing everything, because that's not gonna actually help you at all. I mean, it might help a little bit, but I know I shouldn't just go out here and just, start flailing and just start practicing everything, because then I'll be scattered, and that won't really help me at all, and it'll be the same issue that I have on the other side from just focusing on drawing stylistic work. So balancing that out again goes back to having goals when it comes to making artwork. What do I want to do? What do I want to make? What am I trying to practice? Figuring that out first and foremost, and then starting. That's how we get success. Another thing that I've learned to do is develop an analytical way to break down my art so that I'm not just making things the entire time, but when I'm watching the playback here, for example, or when I am, watching the playback on my own time, I can see kind of how, when in the sketch, I started with the right idea, but then as I went on, I kind of changed it in such a way where some of the movement in the pose was probably lost. So looking at and knowing different little things like that and really developing a good analytical method of breaking down your artwork, whether that means that you trace it or redline it, or just start watching yourself sketch back in real time. If you have an app that does time-lapse, I know Procreate does time-lapse, I know Infinite Painter and Autodesk also do time-lapse. Artflow, you can do time-lapse on Ibis Paint as well. So there are plenty of different options, and if none of that's really an option, you can also just record yourself sketching with a screen recorder, or if you're traditional, you can use your phone. But the whole point is basically just to be able to review yourself drawing and see where your process sort of changed, and maybe go back and see how you would change it. If you don't feel like being your own critic, don't worry. There are plenty of other artists who will help you with that. I can link to them down in the pinned comment, actually. So if you would like someone to redline your artwork, don't worry. I have people. I know people. I don't know these people personally. I just know that they exist. Another thing you could do is if you have some art friends of your own, any mutuals that you got out there on the internet, ask them to criticize your artwork for you, because mutuals are some of the nicest and yet at the same time the harshest critics, because they will absolutely roast your artwork, but also respect your style and try not to change that too much. If you take your artwork to a friend who you see has a pretty good understanding of anatomy, you take that to them and be like, is my anatomy off? They'll be like, yeah. They'll tell you where you did good first, And then they'll roast you. And then they'll tell you other areas where you did good. And they'll tell you to keep going and improving. And that's what I like about getting criticism from mutuals. Another thing, too, is to just look for really basic, simple things that you can improve on quickly, which, like, for example, avoiding tangents, which is something that you can do really simply and easily, which basically just means don't let two lines just, like, touch each other, but if there's supposed to be an overlap in something, make the overlap obvious and clear so that you can tell what's in front and what's behind. Don't let the lines just, like, gently touch each other. That's not how the real world works. In the real world, when things overlap, it's clear and obvious. So make the overlap clear and obvious as well. And that's one easy way you can improve quickly. Other basic things you could try: adding highlights, adding shadows, using correction layers, experimenting with gradients in your colors, using filters to make the colors more cohesive. Also try other artists' tutorials. I know this sounds really simple and easy, and that's because it is, but actually look at the way that they say to do things and give it a try for yourself. And decide what parts you like and what you want to keep and what you don't like and what you don't want to keep. Because honestly, that's a really good way to pick up little tips and tricks here and there so that you can develop a better understanding of what you're trying to put together in your own drawings and your own art style. All of these really simple, basic things add up and make a big difference in the end when it comes to presenting your artwork as finished. I guess the main takeaway from all this is to just never stop improving. Don't let yourself become stagnant as an artist. Don't ever let things get to a point where you're dissatisfied with what you draw and then you decide, it's just my art style, and you give up, basically, because that's one of the worst things you could do, honestly. So those are just some quick and easy ways that you can think about good art and how to get good at art. I know this is kind of like a rambly video. I tried my best to stay consistent with the topic of discussion. I hope I did good. And I hope that you think I did good as well. If you think so, please leave a like and comment, share with your friends, and, check out maybe my Instagram. Link is in the description if you're, looking to see some more artwork. Also, again, if you're looking for people to redline your work and review it, links in the pinned comment for other artists' channels who will do critiques and do redlines and things like that. A few of them have Discord servers as well, so check in the description of their videos to see things like that. And, yeah, have a great day. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.